Back in February, the House of Representatives released an alarming report about toxic heavy metals found in popular baby foods. Now manufacturers in the hot seat facing a bundle of class actions. Attorney Madeline Penley joins me now to talk about this. You know, my takeaway on this, one of the first things I read was the FDA has an action plan. That's an oxymoron,
yeah,
isn't it?
It's discouraging. Doesn't mean anything at all.
That means nothing's going to happen. Tell us what these class action lawsuits are about.
Essentially, the biggest baby food manufacturers in the country have been poisoning your children. So these manufacturers have sold baby food that's contaminated with significantly high levels of very dangerous heavy metals like arsenic, lead, mercury, and children have been exposed to it for years.
So it's the long-term exposure that's the issue. I mean, a doctor can say, yeah, if baby eats mashed up pears that taste awful, by the way, then they're probably going to be okay for that.
Right.
But when they do it day after day after day for years, it is that long-term exposure that causes the problem, right?
Right. So part of the problem with heavy metals is the exposure kind of builds up or accumulates in the body each time somebody's exposed. So really any exposure can add to a harmful amount of heavy metals in the body.
Yeah, in other words, you don't just rid your body of heavy metals every 24 hours.
Right.
It's bioaccumulative is what they would call it. Some of them are what we call biopersistent.
Right.
But we do know this, it's bioactive.
Right.
It affects your systems, your brain, other systems in the body.
Right.
And they've known about the dangers of heavy metals for decades and decades. Who are the companies that are involved in this?
It's a lot of really big household names, actually. You know, like Campbell's, Beech-Nut, Gerber, Happy Baby by Nurture, and Parents' Choice by Walmart.
Doesn't that sound sick? Happy Baby has, now my memory is Happy Baby had, where it came to arsenic, it had like 600 times what it should have, 600 parts per billion. Is that right?
Yes.
And that's off the scale.
Right.
And nevertheless, Happy Baby's selling the product, and they're saying, gee whiz, everything's going to be okay. Your baby's going to be well taken care of. Some of them even advertise that it's organic and you don't have to worry about it, right?
Right. And the problem with organic is, I mean, whether this is true or not, when people are purchasing organic products, they're doing it because they want it to be safer to some extent. You know, they want it to be free from harmful chemicals and things like that. So it's especially frustrating that these companies were allowed to market their product as organic and therefore safer, although it had significantly high levels of dangerous heavy metals.
What are the potential health impacts that we're talking about here? What do we expect when you take a child that's in those developmental years and you expose them to heavy metals for years?
So what we know is one, this is not some hypothetical harm that we're talking about. There are many studies that correlate heavy metal exposure to children with developmental delays. So we see things like cognitive disabilities, behavioral problems, permanent reduction in IQ, and all of these things can lead to the child needing, you know, special education programs and a reduction in their overall quality of life.
Well, I know the science has been around a long time. We know, for example, the lead paint cases where children would often take the paint off the wall and eat it. And, you know,
there's no question that this stuff is dangerous to people, especially young children, and especially at regular regimented doses like daily baby food exposure.
So there's no guesswork here. There's no what we call medical causation, scientific causation questions. That science has been out there a long time.
Right.
Is there any movement in the federal system to maybe make the FDA, for once, just one time, have the FDA do what they're supposed to do? Or is it still controlled with whoever's in office? Of course, this has been going on for so long. It's every administration. It's not any one administration.
Right. So this issue has been on the FDA's radar for at least a decade. You know, from what we can see in publicly accessible information, they've known for at least a decade. And so we can see that if they want to, they can establish heavy metal exposure thresholds for other things. They've done it for water. You know, you can't have more than like 5 parts per billion of lead, 10 of arsenic. But for some reason, the FDA is okay with over 900 parts per billion of arsenic in baby food, which is what we're seeing. So what the FDA needs to do is develop a proactive system for detecting heavy metals in baby food so we can get this stuff off the market.
Well, I mean, don't you at least warn the parent? I mean, isn't there a failure to warn case here? Where you say, look, you need to know this.
Right.
We've tested it for arsenic, and there's arsenic in here. And we tested what mother's going to say, yeah, that sounds good.
Right.
Let me feed this to my child.
Well, that's why they won't tell us about it, because if anybody actually knew, as far as the companies, I mean, if anybody actually knew how much dangerous material was in this food, nobody would buy it. And so actually these companies were investigated by the U.S. House of Representatives Investigation Committee. And that report was released earlier this year. So this is all publicly accessible. And what they found is that all of these companies involved that we talked about earlier either tested their product, saw the dangerous levels and sold it anyway, or never tested their product at all. So either knowingly exposed children to a dangerous toxin or didn't care enough to figure out whether or not they were.
Yeah, at this point, full disclosure, our law firm is involved in these class actions
Right.
that are being talked about. But I think this is bigger than that. It's not a class action. You have children. The mother can say there's no other exposure my child had. They had developmental problems. Yeah, they took Happy Baby and ate it 3 times a day for 3-4 years.
Right.
You know, you do the math, you do the science, and there are plenty of experts that can say this threshold, this burden of heavy metals, absolutely had a connection to these developmental problems. So to me, what I'm amazed about is that there was no national case put together. The MDL, which is the multi-district litigation panel, should have granted that. They should have said, yeah, let's look at this nationally, but they didn't.
Right.
So, you know, we're going to do what we always do. Go after them anyway.
Yep.
Thank you for joining me.